I am very excited about our next speaker. We have here with us Kevin Garvey, who is going to talk about the future of work in cybersecurity, a topic that is of much interest to our Latin audience around the world. Kevin Garvey is the U.S. IT security manager for an international bank responsible for overseeing incident response, vulnerability management, cyber threat intelligence, as well as the Security Operations Center. Kevin has always had a passion to hunt down the adversary and has loved tackling the risk and threat challenges his responsibilities have thrown at him. Kevin, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with our global Latin audience today.
Hey, thank you so much, Jose, and welcome everybody. I'm so excited to talk to you today about a field that I very much enjoy and that I am a part of right now, cybersecurity. And most importantly, I want to give you a little bit of the insider tricks, some of the information that would be helpful for you if you're interested in the cybersecurity realm and the cybersecurity career. But one thing I love talking about prior to even going into all of that is every single one of you already has a cybersecurity mindset. Why do I say that? Well, think about what you do on your personal devices. What do you ultimately try to protect? You think about your bank account, right? Hey, you're not giving out your bank account password to anybody that asks. You are looking at trying to do some protection of that. Maybe you have some strong passwords. I'm sure many of us are quite familiar with some of the easy passwords that we've had in the past, but now we have some strong passwords or passphrases that allow us to protect our own personal account. Maybe you have something called multi-factor authentication, where you have to go over to your phone or another authentication device after typing in that password. Hey, just a little bit of a hint. What you're doing to protect your bank account right now and some other accounts, that's exactly what we're trying to do on the enterprise level as well. Hey, you don't want to give out some of that personally identifiable information such as your name or email address or date of birth or national ID. You try to protect that data. And even so, when you look at some of your emails, you already are cybersecurity professionals because when you see an email that says you've won $2 million, $1 million, you know that's not correct, right? You know that that is a fake email trying to essentially social engineer you into providing additional information or losing 30 pounds a week. Hey, all these things, they sound like miracle items that come in from the email and you say, no. This is ridiculous. I wouldn't click on it. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. People do click on some of this information, which is why the bad actors are constantly trying to go after us in the cybersecurity community and just users at an organization because they know somebody will take the bait and somebody ultimately is going to provide that very interesting account information or that very interesting bank account number that the bad actors are ultimately looking for. I bring this up because as you start looking in the cybersecurity industry, you may say, oh my gosh, I need to know all this technology. I need to know all of these soft skills that we're going to go into in just a little bit of time. I don't know anything about cybersecurity. And I'm here to tell you, you absolutely already know a lot about cybersecurity. What you're going to do is move it from your personal cybersecurity journey into an enterprise cybersecurity journey. We're going to cover a few different things today in our conversations today. We're going to go over the soft skills and also the technical skills that I've seen from my experience on the teams that I'm in charge of that's really helpful for cybersecurity in 2022. And hey, things have changed a lot since I joined cybersecurity just a few years ago. I'm going to go into a little bit of that just a little bit too. Where we're going to go into the skills you already have, the skills that you may want to hone in on in order to build some of that practice in, and then ultimately what you can do to gain some of that experience in the field, maybe at a company that you're a part of, whether or not you're part of that cybersecurity team right now. So a little bit about myself. Hey, everybody. My name is Kevin Garvey, and I'm an IT security manager. Jose already covered what my responsibilities are, but I am in charge of a global team that has a lot of different functional areas that I have accountability for. And we're going to go into some of those in just a little bit. Even if you didn't know what some of those items were, all of them work together. They work together in order to secure the organization that I'm a part of. I also do teaching for the SAND Institute, where I teach the Management 512 Security Essentials for Managers course. And I love teaching the course because I see people from all over the world come in and learn about cybersecurity, whether it be from building up an entire program or potentially just getting some of the technicals down, understanding what is required from that technical and non-technical perspective of being a cybersecurity professional. Well, I'm in the banking industry right now. I was in media prior, I also worked a lot in some of the utility sectors too. So I've had varied experience with cybersecurity across many different verticals. And I tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people for cybersecurity roles within my, not only organization, but within my career. And I'm here to tell you some of the tips and tricks that you can take in your cybersecurity journey that will help propel you to the top of the conversation of being part of a cybersecurity team. And prior to this too, I did a lot of mentoring. I did a lot of volunteerism as well. And we're going to go into why that's so important in just a little bit of time to help build up some of the soft skills, the skills like the communication skills, interviewing skills that are really going to propel you to that next step of your cybersecurity journey. But I'm a finance major. I graduated in 2008 as a finance major. Why do I tell you this? Because no matter what vertical, what your area of study is, you absolutely could join the cybersecurity field. We have a lot of folks in the industry that don't come from a quote unquote typical computer science background. In fact, some of the best folks that I have worked with within my tenure within cybersecurity do not come in with an IT background, do not come in with a computer science background. So it ended up being a very interesting journey for those who are coming into the industry to know, hey, you don't need what is quote unquote the typical next step of your cybersecurity career. You don't need to have some of those technical items along the way. However, there are some ways to learn them, and we're going to go into that in just a little bit. But as I started building up my journey, I started looking at what I could do to start finding out how we could learn a little bit more about not only IT, but cybersecurity in general. So back in college, this is about 15 years ago, what I would do is I worked at the help desk at the time where I had folks coming in to the help desk and they would say, I've got a virus on my computer, Kevin. What am I going to do to help fix this? And a lot of my colleagues, and there were some great colleagues that I had, they would replace the hard drive and they would push the new hard drive back in and say, hey, good luck. I hope that you have a computer that's working now. I, however, wanted to keep many of the folks a little bit closer to the help desk. I wanted to find out a few different things. I was a little curious. I wanted to find out, hey, how did they ultimately get this virus on the computer? At what time? What were they doing? What was some of the behavior of the virus? So I ended up going into some of the system settings, the system logs to understand what this virus was even trying to do. What can we do to mitigate against it? And that started making me think that I was a little bit inquisitive about what could potentially happen with a virus that's installed on a computer. This ultimately started my journey of being in part of that cybersecurity industry. And it made me think of what I could do in the cybersecurity industry to break down some of those barriers of trying to get into the industry. Number one, I have a little bit of curiosity. And we're going to go into that in just a little bit. Networking. Hey, with the folks that you work with within your organizations, the folks that you are working with within your schools, or potentially some local groups that are in the area that you can volunteer with, you're going to learn. A lot of folks that are in the cybersecurity industry are looking for folks to join us in the cybersecurity industry. So network and also training opportunities. And we're going to go into some of those training opportunities that you could actually look at for absolutely free. All of which are online, all of which are going to help your security acumen, especially from the hard skill side. I bring up this entry-level description. And as I look at an entry-level description of cybersecurity, many of you who have been interested in cybersecurity probably feel the exact same thing looking at this description. Hey, this is an entry-level role, but it really requires about 3 years of experience. I'm going to need certifications that require 5 years of experience. Oh, that doesn't make sense, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, hey, within cybersecurity, there are some job roles that do require you to have a little bit of experience or some certifications, yet many of times, these are just canned job descriptions. And we need to get to the bottom of what ultimately these descriptions are trying to tell us. Many of times, even with some of these entry-level job descriptions and the requirements that are listed underneath, you could absolutely not only apply for them, but be very successful within those roles as well as you're starting to build up that cybersecurity journey. And we're going to go into how you can move past that review of the entry-level description, that concern that you maybe think, hey, I'm not qualified for this role. Well, we're going to make sure that you do feel qualified for the role, not only from that hard skills perspective, but also from that soft skill perspective too. And one of the first things that you're going to do within the cybersecurity world is start thinking about how you're going to go forward in your interview process. And there are a lot of different things to keep in mind as you start building up some of those interview skills. And I know some of this may have been covered from other panelists, and I want to tell you from the cybersecurity perspective, what is so important about the interview process. Yeah, there are some hard skills. And again, we're going to go into some of those hard skills in just a little bit. But the one thing that I love picking up on, and one of the cornerstones of cybersecurity, is somebody who's curious, somebody who's not taking the status quo for an answer, who keeps digging when they are given an answer from somebody maybe within the team or potentially outside of the team as well. Why is that so important? Well, within security, we have to understand what the bad actor's motives are. But unfortunately, the bad actor does not give me a call as they're trying to knock on the door at my organization and say, hey, we're going to go forward and try to hack your organization. We're going to utilize this exploit over here, and then we're going to try to pivot over to our database server. They're not going to call me and tell me that. I'm going to have to figure out what that bad actor is trying to do all through the logs that I have in place, some of the threat intelligence that's given to me as well. Well, much of this falls into how you can start answering some of those interview questions. And a lot of it revolves around problem solving, leading, and also the communications as well. And we're going to dig into this as we start going into some of those non-technical interview questions. I interviewed somebody fairly recently for a job. It was a cybersecurity engineer job. And I asked the individual a fairly detailed technical question. And the person came back to me and stated, Kevin, I don't really know the answer to the question that you're trying to pose right now. However, here's what I would do in order to build up the answer that you're looking for. Well, number one is that I'd start doing some basic searching with this vendor in order to find out what this problem may be comparatively to what potentially some of my solutions are from the vendor. Hey, maybe I'll reach out to some user groups or maybe some forums online to find out what potentially the answer may be. We'll call tech support. Maybe I'll look back at some of the tickets that have ultimately came into the organization and see if this has actually happened in the past. And then ultimately, hey, maybe if I finally have a little bit of time, I'll go forward with a lab environment within my house or potentially even my organization to try to replay what's going on and ultimately try to fix what the solution ultimately is. And I'll tell you, it ended up being one of the best answers I've ever had. What did I take from that answer? That answer was, yeah, I don't know, but I'm going to go through some creative ways in order to find out what some of the next steps are. And that ends up being a really good way within cybersecurity to showcase that you're thinking outside of the box, even if you don't know the answer. Because I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. Within cybersecurity, almost every single one of us is not going to know 100% of the technologies that we're trying to protect, some of the logs that we're trying to pull in as well. We've got to know. We've got to learn a little bit in the process too. A few other questions that I love asking during interviews. Hey, what do you do outside of the work that you're currently doing right now to improve on your skills? Some of those great answers I love hearing. I've got a lab environment. Or, hey, I built up a cloud system where I'm going to be able to log into whether it be AWS or Azure, or Google Cloud, and I've built up a little bit of a network within my cloud environment. And again, this is all stuff that falls under what we can do to improve our skills even when we're not working. And we're going to have some really cool tips just in a little bit of how you might be able to really hone in on some of those technical cybersecurity skills as well that are just as important during some of the interviews that you may have. What are you keeping up? How are you keeping up with cybersecurity? There's a lot of different ways. I'll give you a hint. Within cybersecurity, we love sharing information within cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a great area for us to really get to know many of our folks. And also, we're after the same bad actors, right? We're after the folks that we cannot see. We're after the folks that are trying to attack my organization, your own personal computers. We love sharing that stuff. So we have a lot of different podcasts that one could listen to along the way. Many different newsletters. I know Brian Krebs has a great newsletter that I read. It comes out about weekly that goes into some of the tips and tricks and some of the research that he's ultimately done. There's also Darknet Diaries. Darknet Diaries is a great podcast. If you ever get the opportunities to listen to it, really puts a bit of a thematic spin on cybersecurity and starts talking about maybe what some of the incident responders do, what their day-to-day is like. Also, talking about what happens if somebody were to be hacked. It's a really good podcast amongst many other podcasts along the way. And that also helps myself and everybody within the cybersecurity industry keep up with many of those trends. Now, on the bottom, you'll notice that I italicized talk about an interaction, describe a scenario. What is your favorite area of cybersecurity to follow? What I'm trying to get at is not just what exactly the answer is. I want to understand your thinking. I want to understand what you're ultimately going to bring in that creative thought process to an interview. So as you talk about that interaction with another team, and we're going to get to that slide in the next slide, you're going to talk to me about not only how you're able to diagnose the problem, but also lead and also communicate out what the problem is. So what you're hearing is, yeah, there's a ton of technical skills in cybersecurity. Yet at the same time, those soft skills really make the cybersecurity practitioner totally successful within the cybersecurity realm. describing a scenario. What am I trying to get at? How are you going to be able to document, describe a scenario, not only to myself, but those who really aren't aligned with the cybersecurity industry, those who potentially don't know anything about cyber, but are responsible to make sure that the company that you are working for ultimately ends up being secure through the good work that you're doing within your own organization. So I invite you, practice those open-ended questions. Practice many of those that you feel you may have a really strong answer for. You can practice it maybe on some mock interviews and reaching out to some folks who are in the cybersecurity industry. You can practice it on your own as well. Practice some of those great technical and non-technical questions that may come your way within a cybersecurity interview. One thing I love picking up on during an interview are some of those stronger interview answers. So an example question that I have, hey, how did you lead an operational incident from start to finish? And again, what am I trying to get at when I ask a question like this from a cybersecurity perspective? I'm getting after three different things. And I invite you to think about this no matter what stage of the interview process you are on in your cybersecurity career. One of which is I want to understand what your problem-solving skills are. So how do we ultimately solve a problem that you really don't know or don't understand or potentially don't have a process in place for right now? And then when you finally do solve that problem, and many of you probably know many folks like this, where there's a problem that has been solved, but it's really only talked about in their inner circle of friends, inner circle of coworkers, and nothing ends up getting solved. Well, hey, from a cybersecurity perspective, you absolutely have the ability to not only identify some of the problems, but help lead the next steps to hope this never happens again. So in this particular example, I talked about how this individual was talking about problem solving, then ultimately ended up leading a decision process, leading a decision to lead a call, get people on a phone. Hey, that could be a little bit scary at times, especially if you're not used to doing that. But the more that you do that, the more that you lead a problem to a particular solution, you've hit cybersecurity right in the area that is so important to be successful in. And then ultimately communicating out, communicating how you went forward with the problem solving, the leading, and that's also verbally and also written as well. Be comfortable with both and also be open to other people's techniques and other people's opinions. I had a mentor at my prior role. It was actually the CISO at my old organization, who I thought was phenomenal with communication skills, especially the written communication skills. So you know what I did? I saw an email that came from him one day, and I said, hey, I'd like to maybe write an email next time for incident communication, but I want to run it through you. I want to sort of understand how you would tackle this particular communication. And it ended up being a great mentor relationship that I had because I was able to pass a lot of the writing over to him, have him review it, and then we started getting into a cadence where I didn't have to go to him anymore. I started understanding what some of the things that he thought many of the customers would be looking for in much of the communication. So not only look at it from an interview perspective, but also take a look at it from who are those mentors? Who are the folks that you look up to, whether it be at the organization that you're currently a part of, at a school, at some with your friends as well. These are folks that are really interested many times with mentoring you. And I would invite you, and I still do it to this day, reach out to them, say, hey, I really like how you do X, Y, and Z. How can you help me out in this particular situation? What can I do to sort of understand where you got some of that knowledge from to begin with? And I'll tell you, it is really important within cybersecurity that we have that type of relationship with our coworkers, whether it be inside the organization or potentially external coworkers, former coworkers, et cetera. How do we build up some of those soft skills, though? In cybersecurity, there's a lot of great ways that don't cost anything for you to start building up many of those soft skills. No matter where you are, there's a lot of different cybersecurity chapters that may have certain talks, certain events, a little bit like this, that you can go to on the way. One that I'd love to call out is the Open Web Application Security Project. This is called OWASP. It's well known within the cybersecurity industry. The industry loves having these type of events where people can come in, they can start looking at how we can volunteer, where you can start learning not only cybersecurity, but you're going to also be able to learn how you can volunteer for a particular organization. You can learn about how you can lead certain documentation that the OWASP chapter that is aligned to you ultimately is looking for. So you can start building up your own cybersecurity skills, yet build it to also help build up the community as well. SANS Alumni Group has a great chapter in many areas that allows you to start building up other folks that have learned some great cybersecurity skills through the SANS program. And there's also B-Sides, affinity groups. Another one I would highly recommend, go over to meetup.com for your local area and then type in cybersecurity. I still go to the talks within the New York area right now, where I'm able to not only go to the talks, hear what the professionals are talking about, but realize, hey, no matter where anybody is within cybersecurity, I still have a lot to learn. And every single one of us does as well. One way to really find out what you do need to learn and how you can help build that up, for really no cost at all, is to do some of these volunteers or be active with some of the IT or InfoSec groups. And again, I invite you to go over to Meetup. Go over to Google and see what some of those ultimately are along the way. Hey, within cybersecurity, especially from my incident response days, when I had to not only look at a lot of the technical items that were so important for me to know and to understand, but also communicate a particular incident out, I needed to be a leader. And I needed to figure out how to get some of that experience of being a leader, whether it was part of my role or not. So one thing I ended up doing is I became a volunteer leader for a local nonprofit group within the local New York area. And when I did that, I very quickly figured out that, hey, I really enjoyed leadership, but I also saw that there were some things that I'm glad I was able to figure out when my paycheck wasn't dependent on it, such as, hey, dealing with problems with the group that I was with, like personnel problems. Somebody wanted to do something else at a volunteer organization compared to what I had ultimately assigned them to. Hey, these are the exact same problems that we deal with within cybersecurity, and these are the problems that we deal with as leaders as well. The more experience you get in this particular area, the stronger and more confident you'll be as a leader within your organization. And hey, you don't absolutely need to have a leadership title to be a leader within cybersecurity. I go back to being an incident responder. I got to pull all the incidents together. I got to pull all the data points together. I have to communicate out to senior management what that ultimately is. But sometimes I don't have all the data points. I need to get people on the phone, like I was talking about a little bit earlier. Hey, leading an incident call is absolutely you being a leader. So you don't have to be a chief information security officer to be a leader within cybersecurity. Every single role within cybersecurity requires that leadership ability, and you absolutely have the option to start building that up for yourself no matter where you are. Hey, within cybersecurity too, and I know I've been talking about this a lot, is the communication. Making sure that we feel comfortable with our public speaking, where we have to give presentations to people. Maybe we have to do some certain writing. There's a lot of different ways that we can go forward with trying our hand at that. We can go to a local public speaking group. One that's well known within the area that I was in is something called Toastmasters, a worldwide organization. I'd invite you to go check out your local Toastmasters group. Hey, just as a bit of a shout out, it took me 5 years. It took me 5 years to join Toastmasters. I had the cold sweats. I was so nervous about joining Toastmasters and doing public speaking, and I really have enjoyed being part of Toastmasters. And again, it doesn't have to be Toastmasters. It could be any public speaking group. Get up there, feel a little uncomfortable in the process, but that's okay, because I'll tell you, in cybersecurity, we do a lot of talking, surprisingly, and we're going to have to do a lot of communication now. The more that you build up how you feel about that, and that confidence really goes into what ultimately makes you that true cybersecurity professional. I've talked a lot about the soft skills, but hey, we do need some hard skills within cybersecurity as well. The soft skills and the hard skills together end up making a very good cybersecurity person and a cybersecurity practitioner. So I'm going to transition now over to some of the hard skills that I've seen from the cybersecurity standpoint that you could use to help build up your journey within the cybersecurity role. Curiosity ends up being such a big one. Hey, one of the great things I love about cybersecurity is we started looking at things. We may think there's the status quo of just taking an answer from certain folks within the organization, maybe from certain infrastructure groups. However, a cybersecurity practitioner, one that loves hacking, really likes getting into the weeds, getting in and having a bit of a lab environment. And you can build up a lot of different lab environments. I know there's a lot of great videos on YouTube. There's also some guides online of how ultimately one could build up a lab setup. But more than 80% of ethical hackers are self-taught. They are self-taught. Much of the self-teaching was done through them just doing some hands to keyboard items, learning about what they can do to maybe hack their own systems within the lab environment that they have built up. And some of the best red teamers, and when I say red teamers, those are the folks that are maybe ethical hackers, the ones that are on the offensive side of cybersecurity, they absolutely have done a lot of that learning on their own. Build up that lab environment, build up a networking environment as well. And again, a lot of great tutorials out there of what to do to build up that home environment, and then hack away at it. Try to get into your administrative console. Try to figure out how you could go forward with getting to a database that's all the way in the back of the infrastructure that you're currently a part of right now. It's the exact same stuff that we would do from an enterprise level scenario. You're just doing it from a home environment. And hey, if it doesn't work, no problem, right? You keep testing, you keep trying a few things out. Another one that I very much enjoyed is going onto public forums. One that I have loved is the Microsoft forums. So on my downtime, I'll go over to Microsoft. I'll go check out some of the Microsoft forums. Some of it's cybersecurity related. Some of it's not cybersecurity related. One great thing about it is you get to start seeing some people who are asking questions about what's working, what's not working, what some opinions are along the way. Well, if you're active on there, you're also actively answering questions that you may answer in your own work environment as well. And to give you that comfort and confidence when you go into interviews for cybersecurity. Hey, if you're very interested in building up a website or you really like programming, now programming is not required within cybersecurity. In some areas, it's a little bit helpful, like application security, but you don't need to be a programmer. In fact, almost everybody who I've worked with within cybersecurity is not a programmer. Again, there are some teams that do require some programming, but it's not a requirement for the cybersecurity industry as a whole. If you've built up a website or you've done something that has essentially built up that IT acumen, you'll find that, hey, we want you within cybersecurity. And we also have something called capture the flag activities. And I'm going to go into what some of those capture the flag activities are in just a little bit. But think about it from a hands to keyboard perspective. And one thing I love doing with my daughter, so I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old daughter, we play around with Raspberry Pi. I take apart the Raspberry Pi, we put it back together, we try to figure out how it ultimately is going to start up. Maybe we're actually doing a really cool Halloween experiment where I'm going to have a spider try to come down from the Raspberry Pi, and I'm trying to put a sensor on it. What am I trying to say? I very much enjoy, quote unquote, geeking out, right? I very much enjoy some of the really cool technologies that are out there. And hey, if you enjoy that as well, you enjoy breaking things, putting them back together, understanding some of the hardware and some of that IT knowledge, I'll tell you, cybersecurity is calling you, and you're going to have a wonderful time within cybersecurity. Some of the things that you can do in order to build up some of that cloud experience. So when I start talking about cloud, I'm talking about cloud infrastructure providers such as Amazon Web Services, Azure, or also Google Cloud. Hey, you absolutely could get good cloud training, enhance the keyboard knowledge just by setting up some lab environments within your cloud environments. AWS has a great lab setup where you do have to put in a credit card. However, you don't have to spend anything on that credit card. When you end up starting up that AWS account, you're going to start seeing a lot of the things that we are protecting within our cybersecurity industry right now. And I'll tell you, cloud security is very hot within cybersecurity. Getting somebody who really understands AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or other cloud platforms is definitely a bit of a hot commodity. So feel free to utilize some of these really cool future areas like the AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud setups, where you can start getting your hands dirty. And hey, Microsoft also has some really good training courses. They do have certifications along with it, but they do have some great training courses that are given all for free from Microsoft. And why do they do that? It's all online, by the way. But why do they do that? They realize that there's a talent gap. They realize that there are not a lot of folks that understand Microsoft Azure, that Google Cloud area, as well as they would like. So they're trying to go forward with free training. Take up that free training. Get to understand some of the cloud environments. This is also potentially where you may have your lab environment as well. So AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are really great areas for you to not only get to know a little bit better, but also know and understand how you can start building up certain lab environments for free to test out some of the knowledge that you have. I talked a little bit about capture the flags earlier. Think about this as your hands to keyboard experience within cybersecurity. So Edgar Dale, an American educator, had gone into what ultimately makes people learn what we're trying to enforce. We could read, we could hear, we could listen to certain videos. However, if we start actually putting the hands to keyboard, where we're actually doing something that is moving what we had in our brains to that keyboard, we end up learning a lot of fun stuff. And within cybersecurity, that absolutely is something that you can do no matter where you are within your journey. You can do some capture the flags. So a capture the flag, many of them are free, are absolutely available to you, such as the SANS cyber ranges, We also have VulnHub and Hack the Box. VulnHub and Hack the Box are awesome platforms for you to know and to understand some of the areas where you may want to hone in on your cybersecurity technical skill journey. Offensive Security also has a great capture the flag area as well with their OSCP certification. And there's also within the United States, the National Cyber Range for classified and unclassified. Again, think about this as you are putting the hands to keyboard. You're hacking that system. You're trying to understand from an incident response standpoint how somebody ultimately came into an organization. You are learning a lot in a capture the flag. Yes, some of them do have prizes at the end, but hey, don't worry about getting the prize. You don't have to be first place. You could be last place. You are doing the capture the flag. And I'll tell you, that's more than what a lot of people do trying to get into the industry. So play around with some of those capture the flags. Again, a lot of these are free capture the flags. Hey, if you end up getting into a scenario where you're scratching your head and you're like, I don't know how to ultimately hack this box, some of the really cool and old or retired types of capture the flags are on YouTube. So you go on YouTube, get to see what the thematic was, and you might be able to parallel it over to the current capture the flag that you're a part of right now. So I highly encourage that capture the flag, hands to keyboard knowledge. It's going to be really crucial for you to know and to understand. There are some good ways that you could move forward with some of your technical knowledge as well. I'll never forget when I was in the college where I was doing the help desk work, I ended up buying a coffee for somebody who was in the networking team. And I said, hey, I'd like to join you as you start upgrading your firewalls. I want to start joining you as you start moving in certain firewall rules into this firewall. I want to learn a little bit from you. And it was me just reaching out to that person. So feel free to say hello to many of your technical folks that are in the organization or potentially at your school that you're a part of right now. Do some stretch goals as well. Some stretch goals, thinking about how you may be able to know and do your job 100% well, but then maybe 20% of the time you end up just tinkering around, trying to play around with what's working, what's not working. Again, what are you trying to do? You're trying to build up those technical skills in a fun environment. And hey, SANS has some really great free stuff for you as well for cyberaces.org. There's a lot of different SANS summits. And if you don't get the opportunity to go to the SANS summit, which by the way, they're free, so you just sign up and they're free. Many of them are recorded. We have some webinars, also some Tech Tuesdays and white papers to increase that cyber knowledge. And one thing I'd love to call out too, hey, if you do have some good technical experience in the background, no worries. Feel free to come rolling on into cybersecurity. We love when some folks come in from a network ops role or a database role. You are absolutely going to be able to help us out in our cybersecurity field. But again, I only bring that up because many folks within IT maybe think that they don't have those cyber skills. You do. Now, if you don't have that IT experience, no worries at all. Like I said before, I'll tell you some of the best folks that I've worked with did not come from a traditional technical background. They came from marketing. Maybe they came from risk. But I'll tell you, they end up being great cyber leaders and cybersecurity professionals as well. Hey, every single one of us on this webinar right now, you're all cybersecurity professionals. Whether you're employed as a cybersecurity professional, whether you are tinkering around with making sure that your password ultimately does not get hacked by the bad actor for your bank account, we are all part of this technical journey. And there are some really good ways for you to build up some of those hard skills as well that don't cost all that much, whether it's through AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. Maybe it's through some of the capture the flag activities as well. A lot of great ways for you to get your hands dirty and for you to start building up those technical topics. And hey, those soft skills that match with some of those hard skills, I'll tell you, make for a great cybersecurity candidate. Again, let me end with this. Don't be afraid of the industry. We want to help you succeed within cybersecurity. And don't think that some of the experience that you already have isn't applicable. It absolutely is. Many of these techniques and many of these things that you can do from an experience perspective really show up well in the interview and on a resume. And I'll tell you, end up making for some great cybersecurity superstars that I know I'm going to ultimately meet over the next few weeks, months, and years for those who are on this webinar. So with that, hey, Jose, let me hand it back over to you.
Kevin, fantastic presentation. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen so that we can come back full on with our cameras. What a wonderful presentation talking about the industry, the skills that are necessary, hard and soft skills necessary to succeed in the industry. Very well thought out, very well delivered. Thank you so much for that.